Hey everyone, I'm Brian.
I'm Tyler.
And we're Gardener in Love. Hey guys, we are so excited to finally be able to give you a full garden tour. It is a glorious 90-degree day in Charlotte today. We have some beautiful things in bloom in the garden, and we're just going to show you everything that we've got right now. So I'm going to hop behind the camera, and Tyler's going to show you around.
Let's go. We are going to start this tour in our front garden today. I am standing in front of our beautiful, incredible Hydrangea Hedge. They are just about at their peaks. Every single plant is covered in white hydrangeas, and it is so beautiful. These are an Annabelle Hydrangea, which are native to North America, so they perform really well with our climate here. And the best part about these is that they're bred to have stronger stems, so they don't flop over when we get heavy rain, which we get a lot of in Charlotte. So we've got a nice little hedge here of these. This is their second full year in the ground. When we moved in, there were some azaleas here that we took out. They were an old variety that didn't bloom very much, and they only went down to right here, and we wanted a hedge that went all the way down. And I think that this is a pretty big statement in front of our house. The bees obviously love it. They're covered in pollinators every single day. I just want to take a second to speak to the vigor of these plants. Because I know that a lot of you deal with deer, and that is not something that we necessarily deal with in our area. But for some reason, at the beginning of the season, we had a slew of deer come through, and they ate off a bunch of the new growth out of here. And I was like, I'm not going to have a bunch of blooms this year. It's going to look like shrimpy and weird. But you can see they bounced back, and that's why I love Annabelle Hydrangeas, because they bloom on new growth. So you don't have to worry about covering them for frost. Obviously, pests munching back the growth doesn't really do much. And so we love them. They're a really great statement, and the blooms are huge. I mean, look at this one. It hasn't fully opened yet, but look how big that bloom is. This one's going to be really beautiful. Ooh, this one is pretty much fully opened, and look how pretty it is. So these will stay white for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then they'll kind of age to a green color, and then eventually with our heat here, they do go to brown. But those of you that are in the northern climates, you probably get to enjoy more of the green than we do. So I'll take a step forward here in front of our house. You can see our Supertunias are doing fabulous. We were a little bit worried, so when we planted these, we planted Vista, Supertunia Vista Jazzberry with Supertunia Mini Vista Indigo, and we were worried about putting the two different kinds of Supertunias together. We were worried that the Jazzberry might eventually take over the Indigo, but you can see the Indigo is holding its own. They both are covered in blooms, and I personally think, maybe I'm just biased towards the Indigo, but I think the Indigo actually has more blooms. But that's our experience with it. They both are really vigorous plants, and eventually by the end of the season, they probably will be all the way out to the edge, and we'll have to come along with the weed eater every week before we mow and kind of trim them back. The Pugster here is putting on its second flush of blooms. The first round is kind of going out, and the nice thing about butterfly bushes is they also bloom on new growth. So you can come out in deadhead and it'll just keep on going all season. We did come out a few nights ago when they were at their peak and got some footage of what they look like, and the blooms are so fat. It really is beautiful. So I'll come out here later this week once these are done all the way to the tips and deadhead, and then we'll just keep getting more flushes of blooms. So I think that is about it for the front. We did pop in some lantana in between the boxwoods. We've got some Coleus back there. So as the season goes on, this will kind of change and evolve to a different type of garden. I did want to show you guys one bloom. So we have two endless summer hydrangeas on either side of the steps, And these are pH dependent hydrangeas, so that means based on the acidity of your soil, they will be somewhere between pink to blue. And usually for us, they are like a dark, dark, dark blue. And I don't know what's going on this year because they have a little bit more purple, and there's one back here that actually is pink and purple, which is really cool. It gives almost like an ombre effect to the single hydrangea. And I've seen these around town before, but for us, they're always blue. Anyway, it's really beautiful. So these also bloom on new and old wood, so they'll just keep going for us all summer. But I think that's about it for the front, so let's go to the back where the real magic happens. All right, so welcome to our backyard garden. Our skinny side garden here is doing well. The hydrangeas are starting to flush out with their growth. Some of them even have blooms. The Coleus is doing well. It's branching out a lot. Super happy with that garden. I wanted to show you guys this pot. So this is our Patio peach tree that we planted in our very first video, which feels like a very long time ago now. But around the bottom of it, we also planted 4 annuals. This is only 4 plants. So when we say that these annuals are very vigorous, we mean it. You can see it has filled in, and it's only the beginning of June. So I'm probably going to have to start coming in and trimming back the Supertunias so that we get more fuller growth up here and not kind of lanky and leggy. But I've been fertilizing this every week, and they are loving it. The Supertunia honey is getting, it's been more yellow this week, but I'm noticing now this evening, because it's been cooler the past couple of days, the edges on some of them are a little bit more pink and kind of peachy, and I love the variation. It's so cool. It's like a nice little surprise every time you come out here. So we've got our raised vegetable box, and you know, the buried treasure strawberries, when we got them last year, Brad from Garden Evolution sent these to us last year. We became friends with him on Instagram, and they were like little teeny tiny. I think he got them on the clearance rack, but they're big this year, and we have a ton of strawberries coming. It's like we don't even need to go to the grocery store and buy berries, which is really cool. So this is the buried treasure pink. It obviously has pink blooms, but the flavor of the strawberry is just the same whether you get buried treasure pink, white, or I think it even comes in red. Strawberries all taste the same. I do think these taste better the second year. The first year, they just like weren't as sweet, but we wintered these over in this box, haven't touched them at all, and taste really great. So let's keep walking this way. This is our deck. We just got this patio furniture, which is perfect timing with being warmer weather here in Charlotte, and it's very nice to come out here and just view the beautiful garden, especially in the evenings. We got some deck lights up here, but I wanted to talk to you guys about these mangave. So these were sent to us last year from Walter's Gardens, and we kept them during the winter as houseplants, and once it got warm enough where we didn't have any more freezing nights, we brought them out here to live outside for the summer, and they really started to take on really interesting color. So this one started to have more spots and like this pink striping. This one kind of has pink edging as well. But I think mangave are very overlooked, not only for gardening, but as houseplants. I mean, we could keep these in the house all year long, and the only difference that probably would happen is they wouldn't get as much color, but I think they make for really, really cool houseplants, especially this one, although it is a bit prickly, and it has poked me a few times, unfortunately. So we've got a little bit of a random assortment of pots up here, and on the ends here we have 2 concrete pots that both have a small ball-shaped arborvitae in them. And last year we had like a fountain grass in the middle and a bunch of plants around, and while it was beautiful, it just, by the end of the season, started to look a little wild. And I think for up here on the deck, we wanted a little bit more rest and like tidy look. So we decided to leave the evergreens in here for good. I think this is going to be somewhat permanent. And we just did 4 Supertunias around. And we did white in both of them, and then we picked a color that we liked. And I think it just makes everything feel like so much tighter and neater. And the nice thing about the Supertunias is you can come along and give them a trim if you want to bring them in a little tighter, and they'll just bloom even more. They'll get a tighter growth habit. So I think having this just a little bit tidier really helps break everything up, because some of our garden spaces actually end up being a little bit wild. So it's nice to have just like simplicity and a break with the containers. A lot of times less is more, right? So I'll show you guys our fountain. It is doing pretty well. The Supertunia Priscilla has kept up its double flowering this year, which is really nice. The improvement obviously worked. The Alyssum is happy. The boxwood even has some new growth. I am very satisfied. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this Hydrangea tree. You may also hear these referred to as Hydrangea standards. That's just a fancy way to say that it is in a tree form and not a bush. So we got this hydrangea from Brian's mom's garden. She actually trained this into a tree herself. I don't know how she did that. She worked some crazy garden magic on it, and it's pretty straight trunk. And it is a tree. I think this is a Limelight Hydrangea. If not, it is very similar. It has panicle blooms on it. When we got this, we kind of left it, with most of the shape that was on it. But this year, we trimmed it back pretty hard. And these bloom on new growth, so you can trim them back. You actually should trim them back every early spring, late winter. And we trimmed this one back really hard to try to get some additional branches in the middle. And it has really taken, obviously, it's taken really well to the cutting. It's massive. I looked out the window the other day and I was like, holy cow, that's huge. And it doesn't even have blooms on it yet. I feel like last year it didn't even peek over the fence. Like it barely peeked over once they had blooms. But it is obviously really loving this spot. This is at sort of the bottom of a hill, so it gets a lot of runoff water, and hydrangeas love that. So if you're looking for, or if you have a wet spot in your garden and you're looking for something to fill that spot, hydrangeas are a really great addition. We also got our containers here that we just planted in a video. They're doing great. The drip irrigation is working well. I think they're getting all settled in. This Supertunia here is so pretty. It's really taking on more of like the coral color now. I think that might be, I'm sorry, that's not a Supertunia, that's a Super Belle. I think that might be my favorite Super Belle. It's very, very pretty. And this will, of course, fill in over time as the season goes on. So let's take a walk out into the garden, and I want to start with this island bed here. So these trees, actually all of the trees except for the Japanese maple and the birch tree were here when we moved in. This is a Ligustrum tree, and the one behind it is a sweet gum tree. That's my least favorite. It drops the little spiky balls all over the place in early spring. It's like a thorn in my side in the garden. Anywho, we've got some really beautiful stuff in here. All of this, on this side at least, gets mostly shade all day long. We get a little bit of morning sun in this way, but we put the Burnera over here. So this is Jack of Diamonds Burnera. We put it over here because this really, really, really cannot take any sun here in the south. It gets maybe 45 minutes to an hour of very early morning sun here, and then the rest of the day it is in shade, and they are really loving this spot. We moved these to this area earlier this spring, and they did not miss a beat. They put on their little blooms. These get little forget-me-not blue blooms in the early spring, but I actually prefer them without the bloom. So the bloom stalk comes up to about here. Once it's done, you can cut it back, and then it's very much like a hosta in that it's just foliage for the rest of the season, but the leaves get really big. I mean, I wouldn't even say this is full size. It'll probably be more like this once it's to the end. And then the silver really comes into play once the blooms are gone. So I love Burnera. I think it might be one of my favorite perennials for foliage. So this way we've got kind of an array of different hostas. Most of them, actually I think all of these are just kind of random hostas that we have picked up along the way or accumulated from other places. We did just get a little teeny tiny drinking gourd hosta right there, but that will get really big eventually, so I'm hoping next year it will put on some size. And then we've got lemony lace elderberry there and 2 others dotted throughout the bed. And early in spring, when those are first leafing out, the foliage is very, very, very yellow. And if you put them in a spot where they get more sun, it will hold that yellow color. But like I said, most of this is in shade, so we get kind of the darker foliage. But it's still a really nice interest. So if we walk around this way, we've got some Heaven Sent Jacob's Ladder that is done flowering. We've got some Wildberry Hookras. And then I also put in a ring of Hudson Bay Hostas here. And we did this last summer. There was a big limb across here, and so all of this was in shade. And it was glorious. I was like, oh, this is the perfect spot for hostas. It's going to be great. And then Brian decided to get a little happy with the tree trimming, and so we took out the limb, and now this gets like baked with sun. And earlier this spring I was like, oh no, I bet we're gonna have to move all of those hostas. And I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 hostas in here, which isn't, you know, a big feat, but it's still moving 7 plants in your garden. But they are holding their own, and I think that they are actually really loving this spot. These have a really cool kind of texture and veining in them, where it's light in the middle and dark on the edge. You usually see the reversed, so I really like that. Our cardoons that we grew from seed are doing well in here. The cardoons do have a little bit of spider mite damage, which most stuff in our garden at this point in the season usually does. So I've been treating that, but spider mites are very hard to get rid of. But otherwise, they're doing well. They're putting on size. I'm happy. So we'll jump to this side of the garden. So this is what we call our south side bed. So we're facing south this way. And this was just grass, dirt, whatever you want to call it when we moved in. We had that tree back there. And Brian, with his beautiful creative mind, carved out this really beautiful path in here that really marries up with the island bed so nicely. And it's just so peaceful to look at. The double curve is so nice. And maybe we'll do a video eventually to walk you guys through how we actually started our garden, how we planned it out, and how we carved out the spaces. But anywho, we'll keep walking. So we've got some Dondo Blue Ageratum in here that we grew from seed. That is really starting to bloom. We've got a couple extra Supertunia jazzberries. There is some traditional milkweed in here that is blooming, and I'm really hoping that we get some monarch butterflies this year. We only saw one last year in our garden and didn't lay eggs or anything, but maybe this year we'll get a little bit luckier. We've got some Coleus in here that I grew from seed that are starting to put on some nice shape and size, although they did get beat up from the storm that we got yesterday. It really just kind of wrecked their foliage, but they'll bounce back. So this plant here is a really great one. So this is a double play Doozy Spirea, and this is actually the flowering shrub of the year for proven winners. You can see it has gone through its first flush of blooms already, but it is putting on more, and it will continue to flower all season long. It has these kind of almost furry hot pink blooms on it. And when it emerges in the spring, it has really, really dark red foliage just like this. And as it pushes out new growth through the season, you will get more of that color, which is a really nice interest in the garden. And I cut this one back really, really harsh in the spring, probably to like an oversized basketball, and it put on all this growth in a few months, which is really great. And it bloomed for us still, so you don't have to worry about cutting off any blooms. This is a really great plant to add to your garden. So we've got some lemon jade sedum in here coming up. We've got some lamb's ears, serendipity alliums, which are starting to put on their little buds. Do you want to come get a close-up on this, Brian? They're so small right now. But I bet you by the next time we do another tour, these will be in full bloom, and it'll be glorious. So these are serendipity alliums. We've got 5 in here. We've got some little dahlias. But let's talk about this delphinium. So this is a Magic Fountains delphinium that we picked up at a garden center at the beach when we were there a couple of months ago. And when it first started blooming, it was this kind of light blue color. This is like almost out of bloom back here. And I thought, well, you know, we'll put it in this spot. It's the same color as this salvia, but it'll still be beautiful. It'll be some height. And then all of a sudden it put on another bloom stalk, and it's purple, which is beautiful, and it's so moody. This one, I have kind of cut back the blooms as they have started to go to seed, except for these. I need to do that here. And it has kept blooming for us. But if you want delphinium to spread in your garden, you can leave the seed heads, and eventually this will dry, and you can collect the seeds, you can kind of shake it around, and you'll get some extra delphiniums next year, which is pretty cool. Delphinium is my favorite flower for the reason that you see here, that it is so tall and it is so dramatic in the garden. I love them. So we've got some hibiscus here coming into bloom, but we kind of left this as unclaimed territory. So I'm not sure what we're going to put here. We did get a couple ladies mantle at the Garden Jubilee a couple weeks ago that will pop here, but we still got a lot of space here that we can pack in with stuff. So if you got any ideas, let us know in the comments. We've got a Winecraft Gold smoke bush here that comes out really, really, really bright. And as the season has gone on, it is kind of dulled, and it is just, you know, kind of here for the season. But we weren't sure that it was going to make it through the winter, so I'm happy to see that it bloomed at all. We've got some Coast to Coast Hosta back here, and I want to show this hydrangea to you. Oh my goodness. So this is Gatsby Moon Oakleaf Hydrangea, and it is so big. This bloom is massive. I mean, look at it next to my hand. It almost looks like a panicle hydrangea. So it's got obviously white blooms, but they are packed in here so tight. This does bloom on old wood, so this is one, you know, you might want to cover it when it's going to frost in early spring, and you don't really want to prune on it. So we put it back here in the corner, gets shade all day long, and we're just going to kind of let it go. It's loving this spot so far. I mean, that bloom is massive compared to what we had last year. And the nice thing about oak leaves in the fall, they get this kind of like red color, which is a nice pop in the garden. So we do have a couple other oak leaves back here that are just probably traditional varieties. They were here when we moved in, but this will just be all red foliage in the fall, which will be really, really nice. So we've got some hellebores in here. There's a rhododendron that's gone out of bloom. Our Gooseneck Loosestrife is starting to come in. So this is another thing that we got from Brian's mom's garden, and she gave us 2 starts of it, and so Brian planted some here and one over there, and he was like, this is probably going to take over. It's a very heavy spreader, and we came out here earlier this spring, and there was like 10 shoots over here, and I was like, oh my gosh. So eventually this might just be a gooseneck corner, which will be beautiful. It blooms white, so it fits in with the moon garden. So the bloom will kind of be long and curved over, which is why it's called Gooseneck Loosestrife. So the blooms haven't opened yet, but they'll be all white, and all of this in here is gooseneck. So we'll just have a nice little clump here, which will be pretty. And over time, like I said, it'll just keep spreading. It's going to be nice. So we'll keep going here into the moon garden. Things are looking so glorious. The foxgloves Oh my gosh, the foxgloves that I grew from seed back here, they are getting massive. And I don't see any bloom stalks yet, but I think we're getting close. So those will probably be ready in the next garden tour. The Rocapuco and Patience are doing well. This Calumet is starting to bloom. Oh, there's a bumblebee on it right now. Do you want to see if you can get a shot of him? He is loving all the pollen in there, I'm sure. So these are starting to put on their blooms, and it's really, really nice. They'll get about 18 inches tall and wide, I believe. And then when this finishes blooming, I'll give it a shear back, and we'll probably get one more flush of blooms. It's a little bit later in the season now, so probably just one. But the Invincible wee white hydrangeas are looking so nice. When we ordered these, we weren't sure what hydrangea we wanted to put here. And I was unsure about these because it says they come out a very light pink. And you can see this one has like a hinge, just a little bit of pink. But it's not so much that when you're all the way on the deck, you're like, wow, that's a pink flower in your white garden. But you can see once it fully opens up, it's white. It's beautiful. And I really like how many blooms there are in here because it almost covers up the foliage, which is really nice. So this is another one. This is Annabelle. It's another one that blooms on new wood. So no worries about losing blooms to frost or pests or anything like that. Love the Annabelle Hydrangeas. Our David Austin Rose back here is blooming, and you know, this is another one that was supposed to be white, and it says may have a little bit of a touch of pink, but this bloom is like half white, half pink, which normally I would be a little angry about considering this is a moon garden, but because it's so cool, I am like very happy about it. It's really unique. So this will get about 4 by 4, and I have started to kind of train it through the trellis to kind of keep it somewhat contained, but I'm sure we'll get some canes coming out here, and eventually this will all be filled in together, but it's looking really beautiful. I'm loving it. So the Supertunias are doing well. Oh, the coneflowers, you guys. So I knew I wanted white coneflowers in the moon garden, and I knew that I wanted the Price is White coneflowers because I saw them at a garden center last year, and the blooms on them are just so big, and the cone is so big, and I actually really love that the cone is yellow here. Even though this is a moon garden, I think it adds a nice little contrast and a little bit of a break for your eye from the white. They're loving this spot, and there's, oh my gosh, there's blooms coming out on all over them. So once these are done, hopefully the yarrow will take over and we'll have a new interest to look at. I'm really, really, really happy with the moon garden. The pugster is putting on its next flush of blooms, and it's doing well. The phlox will probably be budded up in the next garden tour. And then this here is a Superbina whiteout. And it, from far away, it looks like little miniature hydrangeas, which is really cool. And it's no deadheading required. I mean, it's been going. And especially with the more consistent heat now that we have, I think it's doing really well. So that is it for the moon garden. We're going to shift to our shed bed. So we call this our shed bed, obviously, because the shed is here. But we've got kind of a slew of stuff in here. This whole bed gets full sun all day long. And there used to be, I'll pop a picture on the screen. We showed this in some other videos, but I want it to be in this video so that you can see for the context. There used to be 2 big giant trees here, and all of this was in shade back here. I mean, even the grass, everything was in shade. One of the trees died. It started to crumble, so we had to have them both removed because they were attached. But it kind of gave us a new foundation to start with the garden. So we started with the Bloodgood Japanese maple here in the center, and then we just kind of planted around it things that we liked, that we found. This plant here is Pink Lemonade Baptisia, and it is now out of bloom, unfortunately. but I do have some really beautiful footage that we caught when it was in bloom. It's just a really cool plant because the bloom spikes are really long, and they start out yellow, and as it ages, they go to pink, which is why it's called pink lemonade. So we've got 3 of those in here, and we didn't expect them to get quite this big. I know, obviously, the tag says they get 4 by 4, but this is only the 2nd year, which is crazy. I mean, I would say this is almost full size, which is cool. So in front of those, we've got some white Margarite butterfly daisies in bloom. We've got some more ageratum that we grew from seed. This Supertunia here is Supertunia Vista Fuchsia, and it actually overwintered for us from last year. So I planted these really late in the season for whatever reason. I don't know what I was thinking, but it paid off because I didn't have to come back in and plant them again this year, and they are loving it. I have been fertilizing them as normal every week. We came in and sprinkled some slow release in them, and they're doing fabulous. Love this color too. It's a little bit more red, I would say, than the jazzberry. The jazzberry is a little bit more purple, but this is a nice warm color over here in this bed. And it really goes well with these coneflowers that are starting to bloom. So these are just some pink coneflowers. I don't know the name, unfortunately, but they're a really great addition that we added in here last summer. We're really trying to get, because this is such a big bed and it's full sun, it's very hard to keep it wet. So we're trying to plant stuff in here that is a little bit more drought tolerant going forward, so that we don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, the full sun in the south is going to kill this plant and we're not going to be able to keep it watered. So just something to keep in mind as you're planting stuff. Plant stuff so you don't have to do a bunch of maintenance to try to keep it alive. The foxgloves that oh my gosh, look at this one, I didn't even see. So these are the foxgloves that I planted from seed, and this one has a bloom stalk. I wonder what color it's going to be. Oh, here's one right here that is in bloom. So this one actually is from last year. It just kept going all winter. So this is Dalmatian Peach, and it's obviously towards the end of its life cycle. But I think these might be purple, which I haven't seen bloom yet from seed, which would be really cool. Oh, they actually all have bloom stalks. Oh my gosh, you guys. Wow. Okay, well, we're going to have to do another tour when those are in bloom, so stay tuned. I want to show you guys this Verbascum. So this is Southern Charm Verbascum. This is technically a weed, but Brian has been wanting this, and we randomly came across it at a garden center earlier on in the spring, and it's really cool. I didn't realize it was going to have so many bloom stalks. I thought it would be more kind of like a foxglove, where you just get one bloom stalk in the middle and then it's kind of done, but we've got a bunch coming up, and it's doing really well. So we've got one of the Rockin' series salvias. I cannot remember the name of this one. I'll find it and put it on the screen for you. Planted this one last year. It's another thing that overwintered for us. I think these are to a zone 8, which is like right on the border for us because we're a zone 7B. Depending on the winter, might be an 8 that year, but they don't update the garden zones every year, obviously. So sometimes you get lucky and stuff comes back. Right here, you might be wondering what this row of plants is. So these are dahlias. So the nice thing about being in North Carolina in 7B is that we do not have to dig and store our dahlias. During the winter, we can leave them in the ground, and every single one of these came back up. So pretty soon here, we'll be having some blooms and some cut flowers, which is going to be so nice. I have missed having fresh flowers from our own garden in our house. In our next tour, hopefully, we'll have some blooms on these. If not, we'll be showing you guys the progress as the season goes on. So I think that is about it for the shed bed. Let's walk down here. Got 2 more spots I want to show you guys. So this garden is actually unnamed. This is right outside of our master bedroom. I've been trying to come up with a good name for a while now, but I just haven't found anything that really sticks. So we've got some lamb's ear in here, which is going crazy. This was just 3 tiny little plants, And I even cut it back at the beginning of the spring because it was starting to take over some of the stuff last year. And man, it is a beast. So this is a Helen von Stein lamb's ear. We've got a Supertunia latte in here. We've got some more foxgloves back there that I planted from seed. And we've got White Wands Veronica. So I had 3 of these that came back from last year, and then I added 3 more this year because I just love it so much. I think of all the Veronicas that we've grown so far, this one is my favorite because it just keeps going all summer. You don't have to deadhead it really. You can just kind of let it go and the blooms will just keep coming. Pollinators love it, and it's just kind of like wispy and whimsical. I really like having it here in this spot, especially with the Supertunia latte. It's really a nice touch to see them together. And eventually when the yarrow comes into bloom too, we'll have some varying heights and colors. It's going to be a really nice space. So the last thing in this bed is a flip side vitex. So this is a vitex tree that will have long purple blooms. You may also hear this called a chaste tree. And this one is called flip side because when you flip over the leaves, they're purple on the other side, which is pretty cool. Eventually this will be full tree. Right now it's kind of low to the ground, but it is giving us some nice shade down here for the Hookra, and this will probably be in bloom next time as well. Okay, so let's take a walk to the last space and wrap up this tour. So we've got our David Austin rose here. This is Carding Mill, and it is so pretty. We've had a few flushes of blooms here. We've only got 1 on it right now, but it's still really pretty. I think we're going to get another one for this spot to kind of fill it out. And then we've got, this is obviously a new flower bed, so we've got some area to fill in here. Before I step back here, I want you to use your imagination. This is a work in progress. The flowers, yes, they are beautiful. The pathway and everything that's coming with the hardscapes, just work with me, okay? So this is the Union Garden, and we call this Union Garden for a couple of reasons. So we started to build this area out last summer. Brian put in the fence himself, and we were trying to come up with a name. Nothing was really sticking. And then one day I was like, oh, what if we call it the Union Garden? And so Brian and I had our first date at a coffee shop called Union Street Coffee. And then this garden is actually a sun side and a shade side. So we're marrying or getting us a union of 2 kinds of gardens. So it works, and we like it. So this is a Union Garden. So come on in, we'll take a look. So just imagine down the center here, there will eventually be small pea gravel, and we're going to get some kind of beautiful gate to go back there at the corner of the house to kind of hide the AC unit and all of the stuff back there. And it'll honestly give us more space to kind of store extra plants and things that need to be outside, but we don't want to necessarily see all of the time. But eventually we'll have the gravel here, and it'll just be a really nice spot to come over and have coffee in the morning or read a book. And we really wanted this space to feel different than the rest of our garden. Everything else really leans more cottage, and we wanted this to have more grassy textures, feel a little bit more icy, if you will. So we have the Artemisia in here for the iciness. We've got some meteor shower verbena dotted throughout, and I know that meteor shower is typically an annual for folks, but for here it's actually a perennial. So we planted all of these last year and they came back, and I think this might be my favorite annual because it is always in bloom. There is never a lull. You never have to come and deadhead it. It is just always producing flowers and gives you nice height and drama. I really like it. So we've got some Russian sage back in there that will come into bloom later. And then we have 3 Pugster Blue butterfly bushes in here that are all budded up. I mean, they are just probably days away from blooming. And it will be a nice, really dark purple, almost blue color. We've got some purple Veronica in here that is going out of bloom. It's just so nice to see. I mean, you can see with the wind blowing, it's just nice to see it all move and it's really, really peaceful. I really love being over here, and I can't wait to finish it up and get the gravel. Everything's just going to look so complete and crisp. On this side, for the shade, we've got one Empress Wu Hosta, and then some other hostas that kind of look like Empress Wu, but they are not. They're imposters. We got those from a big box store, so I don't know the name, but you can see the difference in the growth habits. While the leaves do look very similar, the Empress Wu seems to have a stronger, sturdier habit where it's holding the leaves up, where the other hosta is kind of more splayed out. I prefer the stronger, sturdier look just because it gives you more height in the garden, but some of you might prefer this one, so if that's your game, go for it. We've got some Coleus back here that I grew from seed that are starting to poke up, and what we're hoping is that the Coleus will give us some height to kind of cover things in here, so like it'll cover the gas up, and I'm hoping that it will give the hostas a little bit of shade too, because we're starting at this point in the season, this kind of leans a little bit more sun than the hostas would like, so I'm hoping we get some shade. And then we also have a Coffee Cups elephant ear. This also came back from last year, which is crazy because I think that is actually a zone 9 or 10, and we are very far from that. By the end of the season, this will be way tall, and it will cover up the electrical box. You'll never even know that it's there. So the really cool thing about this elephant ear is that it's called Coffee Cups because the leaves stand straight up instead of kind of folding down like you may see other elephant ears. And it will collect water, and as it fills up, when it's ready, it will tip over and pour out the water. So usually, once this is like really big, I will go in the guest bathroom right behind where Brian is standing and watch while it's raining and just watch it pour out. It's very peaceful to watch. I don't know, maybe I'm silly, but I enjoy it. So we've also got some Spearmint Hookra down here, and these blooms have been on here forever, it seems like. I think it's been at least 3 or 4 weeks. This stem is starting to go out, but the rest of them are really holding their own. Of all the Hookra that we have grown, this one is by far my favorite because not only is the foliage really nice and icy, but it seems to handle full sun pretty well. This spot and on the other end where we have them, that really gets more sun at the end of the day, which is also the hottest sun, and they barely burn. There's like a couple that have burned, but they seem to really love it, and it comes back really well for us every year. So we've also got a Limelight standard hydrangea here that is starting to put on its blooms, which is going to be so pretty, and this kind of really rounds out the space, gives us some nice height, get a little bit of shade underneath here, and you can see it peeking out over the fence, which is really nice. But I think that about does it for our first garden tour. I'm so happy that we got to share the spaces with you guys, and I hope you enjoyed seeing everything, seeing what's in bloom right now. We are going to try to do these once a month, so stay tuned for the July garden tour. We will have a slew of other things in bloom for you guys. Maybe we'll even have some new projects completed. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and like this video, and we will see you next time. Bye.